Dear spiritual brothers and sisters, and particularly the Vietnamese Buddhist brothers and sisters, I am extremely happy to be here, talk one important text wrote by Nagarjuna, Lungsu Pusa. Lungsu Pusa, in Sanskrit Buddhist tradition, almost considered like second Buddha. Very famous I think not because of some of these snakes, but because of his writing, really marvelous. And also the writing in such a way, you see, he always, they put the view through reasons, not just mere the quotation of Buddha's word, but he rather, a clear presentation through reasoning. So because of his sort of way of presentation, through logical way, so therefore, all his sort of follower, the immediate follower like Arya Deva, and also the Buddha Palita, the Vivek, Bhavivik, all these great scholars, great masters, always explaining Buddha's teaching through reasoning. So I'm extremely happy having opportunity to touch that, or the text. Although text not very easy, and fortunately now no time go through, so that's for me fortunate. If we longer time go is word by word, there is sometimes the text. Some portion I myself not very clear. So then of course Vietnamese Buddhist, we is the same as the follower of or holder of same tradition, Sanskrit tradition, and like Nagarjuna's, Lungsu Pusa's sort of a tradition. So actually we are the follower or holder of Nalanda lineage, great Indian Buddhist learning center, Nalanda. So, very strong light. I can't see those people's face. Now easier. This hat, neither yellow hat or red hat or black hat. This is something modern hat. Very practical hat. Already, I think, 10 minutes, delayed, right? Because of traffic.
Traffic.
So you all have text or not?
They do.
Text?
No. Vietnamese translation.
English?
English, Tibetan, and Vietnamese translation.
Vietnamese also?
Yeah.
No. Then I think organizer, I think should make available.
Can we have some text on the stage?
Hey, oh yeah. For them. No, I already have, you see, this Tibetan. Did it? The essence of this text, two things: infinite altruism and right view or view of or the wisdom which understand shunya. So these two things are the sort of the main subject. Now, what is purpose? What is our benefit? These two things. Firstly, altruism brings inner strength. We can observe those people who have more compassionate mind, altruistic mind. Their attitude is very open, so easily communicate with other people, and through that, and such people, I think their whole sort of conduct very truthful, very honest, and transparent. So that brings trust. Trust brings friendship. Friendship brings harmony. So we are social animal. So our day-to-day life very much related with rest of the people. So more warm-heartedness there, person 24 hours, much happier. And that person always can feel you surrounded by friends or same human brothers, sisters. If that kind of mental attitude lacking, extreme self-centered sort of attitude, then difficult to conduct such a transparent or honesty. So, as a result, suspicion, distrust. Result, finally, you feel you surrounded by hostile or distrust people. So result, you feel very lonely. That's very much against basic human nature. So the altruism, not talking about next life, not talking about nirvana or Buddhahood, simply more experience about altruism, this very life becoming much more happier. And since mentally more healthier, more happier, so the physical condition also becoming much more healthier. Healthier,
Healthier.
like that. Now the other topic, the understanding of shunya. Shunya, the ultimate reality. The very meaning of the emptiness is the meaning of interdependency. So that concept very, very helpful to develop also the holistic view. In the reality, everything interdependent, interconnected. Even our health, many things involved. or mental peace, also many things involved. So now, broadly, global level speaking, the environment issue. We, human being, and human being, other animals, everything interdependent. So, in order to know this holistic picture, the concept of interdependency is immense help. So sometimes I'm telling non-Buddhist, I'm telling as far as the religion is concerned, they have no interest about Buddhism, and actually they should be non-Buddhist tradition. For example, Christian or Islam, traditionally, if their family belongs to that traditionally, then much better to keep their own tradition. But meantime, this view, the interdependency, interconnectedness, this view, this idea comes from Buddhist word, but is applicable way.
Very applicable.
Applicable to all people in our daily life. So that also the concept broader way.
Very
broadened our mind, our view. So through that way, our action become more realistic. So many problems is due to a lack of holistic view. We just look one single sort of small angle and pick up one single sort of cause or factor. Then try to deal with that. So reality, many things involved. But your way of handling is just looking or aiming just one part. So your action become unrealistic. So therefore, in order to bring more realistic attitude, more realistic sort of approach, it is highly necessary to know the reality. In order to know the reality, holistic view is very essential. So this doctrine,
this teaching,
the teaching of interdependency, another sort of aspect of interdependency is selflessness or absence of independent existence. So these two things. So now, text. So these two things, altruism related with warm-heartedness or heart. This concept of interdependency is related with intelligence. So something like food for brain or intelligence. This concept is very useful. For food or fuel for warm-heartedness, this altruistic sort of teaching is very, very helpful, like that. Now at the beginning, of course, most of you understand English, a little bit, like me, isn't it? We can compete, your English and my English. So the Vietnamese Buddhist tradition, I do mainly through Chinese tradition, isn't it? Or sometimes maybe direct connection with India, maybe. But most cases, I think through Chinese tradition, like Korean, Japanese, and also the Vietnamese, the original text, mainly in Chinese text.
Chinese script.
So the Chinese Buddhist or the tradition of Chinese is, I think, start the 2nd century, 3rd century, like that, 3rd, 4th century. Tibetan tradition start 7th century. So therefore, we are a younger student of Buddha. You are elder. So at the beginning, I always make salutation to Chinese Buddhists as well as the Vietnamese Buddhists. Thank you. And then the youngest Buddhist tradition, some of these American Buddhists, youngest Buddhist. So now Tibetan. The Vietnamese the engi tuwa shologa engi.
Gosha.
Oh, different.
Dinal shologa churu shologa chik thebatu.
Ka.
The version del shologa chik thebatu.
Tanda kharisdo.
Na.
Tanda kharisdo.
Tanda di tanda churu di thebarisha. Di kewayo ma.
Shologa churu di.
Churu.
Yeah, that's enough. Shungdi 질 도디 공다 규콩 니 시주잖아요. 디 규콩도 저대도. 가르서는 정주 셈진 제바 손에 정주 셈스대한디 질 동안 투문에 리디아의 근디 정주 셈스야 소 공부시서디 nga lami logi 단담 정주 셈 외세기 등이 패지 뒤zon도 숨겨야래. 자, 다디 슝디 잡았견세 사회 저슝디 성주저유 류니베 직제 남남 송셰베 직제 뭐부 탐제 당자와 풍부감도 계시도 송전스번 남자 셜다면 냠니베 라스선에 맞고 동반이 정신 놓으세요. 까먹었죠. 디 성주저유 직제 다 디인저가 경영이야래. 근데 인도 슝디기 외세 다 단도 외세가 조금인데 숭주 조금 디고 조승 거야래. 자, 근데 인도산에 나 라미 투모 모임에 단담 창주 셈디 제시 준비가 인도산에 창주 셈지 스테이션.
The text that we are going to study is entitled Commentary on the Awakening Mind. And in terms of the scriptural sources of this particular text by Nagarjuna, there is the Sutra source and also the Vajrayana tantric source as well. But between these two, the primary source really is the Vajrayana tantric teachings. Therefore, although the term Bodhichitta, the awakening mind, is used commonly both in the Sutra teachings and in the Vajrayana teachings, here the term Bodhichitta or the awakening mind has primarily the meaning according to the Vajrayana teachings, because the root text to which the Nagarjuna wrote this commentary is really 5 lines citation from the 2nd chapter of Guhyasamaja Tantra, where it is spoken in the words of Varochana, and therefore, so the text, when it bears the title Commentary on the Awakening Mind, here awakening mind really refers to the Bodhichitta or the awakening mind understood according to the Vajrayana, particularly the highest yoga Tantra, where awakening mind is understood in terms of the subtle clear light, ultimate clear light mind, both at the level of completion stage and particularly at the level of the union of clear light and illusory body. So that's the primary meaning of the term awakening mind here.
다음도 저디 뭐부터 저 당저와 시속에 안다 까먹어버리기 다 규칙직직디 지 타투도 취시타는 대당 연구도가 타투 선두저규 자 율리아 세규다 배규 니체 안드디 중국 규도 차샤나 세규지기 말해 디 중국 가자 사운드의 규디 배율지브리 배율이야 지 직직 다 다다 몽골 자야게 되지 자 디리미는 타투도 취시관에 자야 송브리 저도 선두저규 찍了 아니 시주신부 주선님 사용부시비 규디 별 규려 말에 맞아 신시주신부 주디 시주도 아주 참 차상한 규매이나 맞아 신 맞아 시주 주스 송고야 별 규셔도 시주 말에 제니 다 저들이 저주 직직도 나 먹고 자야 되지 다 안데 고물루기 다 직디 또 될자인도와 색 단도 색 조림지 조자인 거야. 단도 색 조림 샤인도 자네 그게다 가소리 직동 예미 사지 차디가 인도 자네 유유에서 동바티 유유에서 딩예지로 리베이시 세다디 데 가자 유정교에서 니에 나네 안들디기 저 유교에서 때는 발용기하래.
So when we speak of commenting on the Vajrayana text, particularly the tantras, there are generally speaking two main categories of tantra referred to as the explicit tantras and hidden tantras. So the explicit tantras are like Kalachakra Tantra, but the hidden tantras include, for example, Guhyasamaja Tantra, which is the source of this particular text by Nagarjuna. So in the hidden tantra, like Guhyasamaja Tantra, the meaning of a particular, even a single term can be interpreted in many different ways. For example, one uses the interpretive method of invoking, applying what is known as the 4 modes and the 6 boundaries, so within which a single term is interpreted in different ways at different levels. And here, for example, Guhyasamaja is the root source of this particular text, and Guhyasamaja Tantra, root Tantra, has 6 principal explanatory tantras, out of which 5 of them have been translated into Tibetan. So 5 of them are available, 1 was not translated. So here, when Nagarjuna is commenting on the Bodhichitta, the awakening mind, he's commenting on Bodhichitta at the level of not only Vajrayana, but also at the level of the completion stage, understanding of Bodhichitta, awakening mind in terms of the clear light mind at the level of completion stage. So, and here, so when we talk about the clear light mind on the completion stage, essentially we are talking about indivisible unity of awareness and emptiness. So here, we have 2 dimensions. One is the objective dimension, which is the object emptiness that is being experienced by the wisdom mind. The other one is the subject that is experiencing that emptiness, which is the subjective clear light. And between these two, the principal understanding of bodhicitta that is being brought in this text by Nagarjuna is the previous one, the first one, which is the objective emptiness or objective clear light.
도시원에 쉐베이나 너도 공지 나네 콜로를 무슨 숨도가 콜로 당부 den시 청고 콜로 바로 천님의 배 청고 콜로 숨바 레버 나버치 청고를 전에 숨숨도가 전에 다 유유에서 다 den시 콜로 당부 den시 청고 되기 산제배 처기 좀실도 손인 거래 바로 천님의 청고서야 돼 시싱 흉들이들이 디디기 유유에서 딴 파버래 다데네 너도 공제랑게 겁네 아니 레권 넘버 7 청거스는 너도 공제도 아니 생이숨 차친다 송기 랑 생이 두모도 차친 송기에 인도자네 레권 넘버 7와서 송어레디 너도 지 콜로숨베 텔라 아니 하나 디시베 닝군 도스니 규라메 셰자는 도시도가 다 전에 규라메 규라마다 가서다 규라메 셰자는 도다 규라마 전에 디다 슝디기 슝산지 소르 슝산지 디기 또 유전에서 되는 법용이요래 저다가 라미기 다 저가 슝디디 대대보다 콜로 발백권의 송시에 동리되다 유지에서 되다 콜로 탐액권의 송시에 유진유에서 딘이부터 숭둔제니 탑시 예르메치브직 타네 에네 람주지 송도가 당가 겁니 디젠드지 송이야래
So when we talk about the teachings of the objective clear light mind, we are essentially talking about the Buddha's teaching on emptiness, and which is presented in his various sermons. And from the point of view of the sutra, a system of teachings, for example, according to the Samdhi Nirmochana Sutra unraveling the intention of the Buddha, we identify three turnings of the wheel of Dharma. The first turning is the Four Noble Teachings on the Four Noble Truths. The second turning primarily constituted by the teachings on the perfection of wisdom, Prajnaparamita Sutras. And in these two turnings of the wheel of Dharma, Buddha presents principally the objective clear light, which is the teachings on emptiness. And then the Samdhindramochana Sutra itself refers to the third turning of the wheel, which is referred to as the clear distinction of the various natures. And here, a subsection of the third turning of the wheel of Dharma includes sutras like Tathagata Garbha Sutra, the Essence of Buddhahood Sutra. And in these teachings, in addition to the objective clear light of emptiness, the Buddha also teaches the subjective clear light of the wisdom. And so what is unique about the Vajrayana teachings is that Vajrayana teachings presents a way in which the objective clear light, which is emptiness, and the subjective clear light of wisdom can be brought together into an indivisible union, and thereby presenting a path by which one can approach enlightenment through this indivisible union of the objective clear light emptiness and the subjective clear light wisdom.
질 탑시 송지 세니 배시 상제의 최지던 조단치 탑시 송지세 다한데 나가는 가서 거로는 탑시 송도 대단디 로직을 탑시 이게 내 상황지 탑시 뭐 이름이 쉬셔야 돼요.
So in generally, the union of method and wisdom is a very essential part of the Buddhist path to enlightenment. And particularly in the Vajrayana context, the union between the method and wisdom is brought within into an indivisible union where within a single event of the mental state, both the wisdom and method are present. So it is brought into an indivisible union.
Yeah. 다도 루주기 청주 샘지기 하나 선두저기 지도만 자유주산에 뭐부 탐자 당차와 세야되기 산제베 최 마도베 지 응원다 다대 지다 가다 지 떠주예베 취주 창말하게 소울 세야다 아트마 세야지 송도가 어다 디 아니 풍부 말에 된 신도 다 여대가 식시하게 하래 어다 디 산제베 달려 타냐 근데 저거서는 뜻이랑 다 세야지 민다 그래 그 제주도 상대하래. 아까다 요매에 딱과. 아니 풍부하다고 차샤는 도마 사도지도 도매정시도 디멤버친이 직부정시 딱직. 아니 풍부스도 직질 돼야 되지. 샤토마 사대지. 다스선에 그걸 때문에 랑자시 해야 되지. 네 뜻이랑 신시해. 대대비 다 나바 탐지도 요 말이스. 뭐 탐지 당자 왔어. 배는 뭐 탐지 당자 왔을 전에 뭐 무슨 전에 안 졸로려야 나 세야지 차서디 풍분한 사용도 와. 나의 류드 셈니기 난도 하지네 나사로 시셔도 와. 된저기 강을 때는 나오 냐베 로 차르세 풍분가 대다 왕 교명이 풍불리 된신데 다 자원해요 말에 다 잘 뭐부터면 당자왔어.
So the text begins with a citation from the root tantra of Guhasamaja, where we read, devoid of all real entities. And the way in which Nagarjuna interprets that line is to really present the understanding that that in the Buddha's teaching, any notion of some kind of real entity that possesses an independent existence is rejected. So historically, there evolved many different philosophical schools of thought, and except for the Buddha's teaching, all ancient Indian schools of thought subscribe to some notion of an eternal principle, referred to as Atman, or some kind of eternal soul. And the characteristics of this eternal soul is understood to be unlike the aggregates, the body and mind, which is the basis of that self, which is multiple. The self is thought to be a unity, a single entity. And unlike the aggregates, which are impermanent, the self is thought to be permanent and eternal. And unlike the aggregates, which are dependent upon other forces, the self is thought to be independent. So a notion of an eternal principle that is unitary, eternal, and independent was postulated. So Nagarjuna reads the first line as rejecting this kind of eternal principle, both in relation to the self, but also in relation to the basis of that notion of self, which is our body and mind. Because generally, in our naive sense of our own self, when we think about the idea of I or me, and the notion arises as if coming from our body or coming within our mental processes. So Nagarjuna is pointing out that not only does this self, which is imputed, exist, but also the basis upon which the notion of self arises, which is our body and mind, these physical and mental aggregates, also are devoid of any independent existence.
Yeah. 풍부함 등 기시 이송도 좀 남방바 사되기 랑데 좀 더 시승도가 당 좀더 셰베난 게 지라마 좀 더다 너데베 좀 더 얘기 강사가 담이 쌈 직송구야래 최지 담이 송구야 말해 지자다 대니부터기 공도 까셔베 무디베 에는 좀데 따셔베 덕지랑 다 사디 야마레스 다음에 직송 대성도 마세베 에니 풍부 낭네 에니 풍부리에 왕교gen 게다 랑자치 맞으로 셔도 된저기 강사 랑자투 된저지 나지 야마레스 어다 된저기 강사가 다음에 직송이야래 뜻이랑 다 매베 다음에디 다음에 rak버리 강사 랑자투에 자유지 동에 다음에디 다음에 강사가 다음에 딜루 다음에 차차되야래 세상 어다 된저비 다음에 송기야래 다 풍급 계시기 최디기디 다도 주어래 가다 답을 주어래 풍금 지식이 최디에 뒤에 너나 수전의 셰바 수신이 다 조 수신이로다 지 데미도지리들이 여르되네 근데 사실 패널스게 믿어와 다 안데 패널 여더버티 서와티도 셰기여 서와티도 럽도 셰바로 서와티도 영향이 셰베 리디디 야 수전을 땡기도 와 그래서 디니부디 안도다 캐셔부셔도 와 그래서 디니도 전에 셰바 강로 댄세 수전기 풍부디디 초이 다 초참에서 다가다 참이 뒤직 셰니 뒤진 참이 셰니 참이 디상을 락바 풍금지지 수전기 처리 직샤 다 풍금지지기 셰베르디디 예 셰바 깨지 참이 그 균투네 아니 셰베 균지 샤제 어디는 셰요래 그래서 딘데기 애니 풍금지지 남샤직 샤샤바데 딱 강사 강을 때네 딱에 시디 봐 지 산지기 쳐나리야 강사세야디 풍불을 된심이야 말이스 강사세야디 풍불을 때네 샤바레스 전다 디숭도와 따라서 강사 강을 때네 다야게 시 풍부되기 다 안들데 수전 차샤는 저지 참에 나셔바 차샤는 즈부 차샤는 기지 참에 다 디지 사레 아니 숨진이 샤베 말이 다 딘데디 다 최지 다음에 말에 아니 좀더 고마 좀더 리야 좀더 니샤베 넘릭바도 우모부 니샤베 다 넘릭베 가르친 거잖아 딘데기 찬도 얘기 아니 숭지 참이 샤대야지 숭지지 참이 디싹베 아니 숭어 라과다 다 숭어도 즈바 디 참이 숨시 참이 싸네 다 샤샤버디 야마레스 아니 다단 저조 디입니다 가서 주디 숭어디 숭어 뒤 철을 봐도 이나야 그 차셰 체야 예버지마도 차셰 매베 참이 자원의 야마레스 근데 인도산에 파파파파 자리에나 니 숭의 처 강이나야 자나니야 야마레스 유영은에 주버지 시샤체 유영은에 주버지 시샤체니 아니 봐 자연도 많이 봐 인도산에 다 매발 다 잡으리 근데 인도 아니 숭어 치료도 주야 말이스 숭어 치료도 주버도 능게 열데 나와도 주야 말이스 치료가 된저들 치료가에 담에 시행 거야 다 치료가 인도산에 다 치료 캐용도 다 아니 수로로 소비셔들이 여러 받아 녀미도 능도 가 자, 딜레이드스는 다 녀미도 나 수저셔들이 가졌으나 런진 셰바 티땡네 바샤사도 나래 마도 거라 치료 단도 주버지요 말이스 어제네 다 도세네 송지 니지 돈에 다면 쳐지다면 시야이 말이
And then when read the lines 2 and 3, which reads, utterly discarding all objects and subjects, such as aggregates, elements, and sense fields. Here, Nagarjuna is first referring to the philosophical views of the first two classical Buddhist schools, Vaibhashika and Sautrantika. Both of these non-Mahayana classical Indian schools, Buddhist schools, accept the Buddha's teaching on no self and reject the notion of Atman, that is unitary, unchanging, and independent as postulated before. And on top of that, they also reject the notion of any kind of self that is the owner of our body and mind. You know, in our naive perception of self, we have a feeling that over and above our physical and mental processes, there is someone or something called me that somehow owns this, to whom these physical and mental processes belong, that which is somehow independent of these bases. So this a kind of a notion of self is also rejected. So according to these two schools, the Buddha's teaching on no self is understood in terms of the absence of a self-sufficient and independent self. So, however, these two schools do accept that when it comes to the basis of the notion of self, which are the physical and mental processes, these are unlike the self. They possess real existence. Whether it is physical or mental processes, they possess real existence. And these real existence can be grounded in understanding their deeper reality. So for example, in the case of now here, we're primarily talking about mental processes and physical phenomena, because these are the two domains that have direct bearing on our experience of happiness and suffering. When we talk about happiness and suffering, which is our main concern as sentient beings, we are talking about subjective experiences, which are mental and psychological processes, and these which are seen as the ultimate constituents of matter, which then through greater aggregation give rise to the macroscopic level of physical world that we experience. And similarly, when it comes to consciousness, the mental realm, they understand the existence of consciousness in terms of their ultimate constituents as being indivisible units of cognition, kind of moments of cognition, which through aggregation creates this continuum that we experience as conscious experience. So, and this is how Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, the two classical Indian schools out of the four, the non-Mahayana schools, account for our reality. Of course, this understanding of reality is then rejected and critiqued by the Mahayana schools, the first of which is the consciousness-only school, which is Vijnana Matra, or mind-only. And according to the mind-only school, they take issue with the notion that the physical reality is constituted or made up by indivisible elements, elementary particles. So according to mind-only school, the argument is that no matter how minute you take this dissection of matter to any level, so long as it remains matter, material, it must have some notion of parts, because without any sense of directional location, the whole notion of matter breaks down. So therefore, if you analyze in this way, the notion of indivisible elementary particle just does not, becomes untenable. Therefore, they reject this attempt to understand the nature of reality in this reductive manner and building up from this indivisible elementary particle. So therefore, Chittamatra, the mind-only school, rejects even the physical reality that we experience. Then the question arises, now, given that we do experience the physical world, we see flowers, we see vases, and so on, then, how can we, what are they made of? And the mind-only school's understanding is that these are, in fact, extensions of our own perception, which results from habitual propensities that we create in our mind, which then appear as a projection out there, as if there is an external physical reality. So in this way, the mind-only school critiqued the view of reality of Vaibhashika and Sautrantika.
Tadi 풍국함도 지지기 수어 방법스럽네 럽토야스도와 수어 방법 직세 다지네 짐바 다 덴주식도와 짐바런시 저버디 시기 알아와 다다 짐바랑은 저지 자 다디 우마베 슝국걸이 알레윤데 수어 that temperament machine, Zimbayan temperament is. Some Zamba Kyu Lula, any Chidun Kanaya, Zimbat Dindu Debe Indusane, any Zimbe Chardove, Dawad Tunge, Choa Didu Settler, the Chatan, Guaya, Tashi Kartua says. Young Sarvati. Such a Indusane, Zimbat Dindu Gurgiorta, Sunzi Nigalo. 저선 철로 담에 냠니베 라서 söne 마게바 스자네 짐바 나셰바 대양 아니 차셜 뜨네 차셜 뜨네 다 두드르시레스 제네 어다 셰바 대양 대만이네 아니 대만이네 마게바 모니기 마게바 라왕 마주바 다시 셰야레 디 우마벤도 하셔야 돼요. 그래서 전에 맞아 동원이 지라신 거. 어다 되게 지 시징이 되는 소원한 신기 최탐제 원이 주변 동하래. 당연히 코알로 코약. 그다 싸워르디 나 된도도 좀 되가나 토이고도. nga temper zba tele jikde ming da ro da jir chöji dang de kangsa dang ji ning ne kangsa dang ji na ne kangsa shen temper zhuan zba zong de ba se be dan zba da reng ni den du de zba ni be na ne kang le de ne nga o nya be cha se nga te den du de zba tele jikde se do wa jibi shi ji 풍부 사발 미네 nga o nya de zba da wa yi de sa ne jikso de da wa shi do wa 다디 때내나 주니 쓰면 난그 싸우르다 디가 머리부터 담고 디가 레고도 가사가 시대 다 가사 봐봐도 상당히 되잖아요. 자야 가사가 득실이 셰베 규를 때는 따고 있잖아요. 셰바 때문에 달라 봐야 돼. 셰바 코랑 게 정신 때문 대래 다 상당히 싸울 토요. 아주 종아가凶呢 질소 된도 상다 연구를 집어된도 상다 연구를 조조데 집어된도 강 상다야 대낭전에 시바 차라 chen 시바 참을 관계 동리 단어 봐야 돼 조송도 상대나 배나다 고불루주기 세기 도 아다 아리안데 루주근 자셰베 지면 제바 주두 나리야 심지신이 단어 봐야 돼 조시 송도와 산전 제제 저선 착진도 자신 걸리네 조 심지신이 단어 봐야 돼 조시게 하래 저 들이 메인드잖아요. 시베 자와 심지 제버레신 순경으로 봐. 저 들이들은 시베 자와 생 심코라. 당연히 들이 나란주 디두 제법 디두 영업부 다체. 다세 봐봐 삼답이 있나? 시베 길을 때는 따고 있는 들이들잖아요. 시바코라 단동데 시바코랑 그릭시 삼다다디 조적도 와. 저 들이 메인드잖아요. 안 돼. 랑스 söne ma de rang sem sin mo sem zo ga ge la da kan da ka zo sem ding dong ni da la phya de nga dong ni sem de su ge ya de da ti song sha 랑스 söne ma ye ba dong mo ni ji shin do.
Then we read the remaining lines from the root tantra, which reads, due to sameness of selflessness of all phenomena, one's mind is primordially unborn. It is the nature of emptiness. So here, Nagarjuna is presenting the final view, which is according to the Madhyamaka, a middle way school, where they reject the perspective of the mind-only school, because mind-only school, through their analysis, although rejected the intrinsic existence of external world of matter, but they accept that the internal world of subjective experience or consciousness possess real existence, has some kind of independent intrinsic existence. So what Nagarjuna is saying is that just as the external world of matter becomes unsustainable, untenable, when you subject it to analysis and seek for their ultimate constitutive elements and ground its reality in that way, in the same manner, if you take consciousness or mind again and we apply the same analysis, we will not be able to find kind of, a real existence or intrinsic existence of even consciousness as well. So therefore, and furthermore, one problem with kind of, grounding the notion of consciousness in some kind of intrinsic existence is that, then there is no a real antidote to deal with attachment related to one's own experience. Through rejecting the reality of the external world, one may be able to prevent attachment towards external objects, but if you kind of reify your internal experience, then there is no antidote to counter the attachment and grasping that might arise with respect to the internal world of experience. Therefore, Nagarjuna's teaching presents a negation of not just the independent existence of true existence of external world of matter, but also the internal world of experience as well. So in this way, the teaching of emptiness is presented right across the entire spectrum of reality. And in fact, the teaching of emptiness across the entire spectrum of reality is the main subject matter of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, these teachings. And all of this points out that the root of our unenlightened existence, samsara, is really this grasping at true existence of all phenomena, and particularly a true existence of one's own self, on the basis of this innate notion of I am, me. And so therefore, in the Buddhist text, we speak of grasping at the true existence of the person and grasping at true existence of phenomena. And between these two, the grasping at true existence of the person is more fundamental cause of our samsaric existence, and particularly here, not just grasping at some other person, but rather grasping at the true existence of your own sense of me, I. And this is referred to as the egoistic grasping, grasping at one's own sense of I. And in fact, this is the first link in the chain of 12 links of dependent origination, where we identify ignorance, fundamental ignorance, to be the first link in that chain. And so, therefore, it becomes very important for the spiritual aspirant to understand the emptiness of the person. And in this course, what becomes important is to also have understanding of emptiness of the consciousness itself. Because when we talk about the notion of sense of self or person, the person or self is designated on the basis of physical and mental aggregate the processes, and within this, it is really the mental continuum which serves as the primary basis for our notion of self and person. Therefore, understanding the nature of consciousness becomes very crucial. And particularly if you look at the highest yoga tantric teachings, these teachings really emphasize meditation on the emptiness of mind, because emptiness of mind, understanding the nature of mind, becomes crucial for understanding emptiness. And in the Vajrayana teachings, there is a recognition of different levels of subtlety of consciousness, the grosser level, subtle level, extremely subtle levels of consciousness. And when one meditates upon the nature of mind, it is done so in terms of invoking a subtle level of consciousness and meditating upon its emptiness. For example, in Aryadeva, who was the disciple of Nagarjuna, in his commentary on Nagarjuna's 5 stages, called the Compendium of Training or Compendium of Deeds, there Aryadeva presents the teaching on emptiness primarily on the basis of meditation on the emptiness of mind, the nature of mind. This is because mind is the basis of the notion of self, and self is the subject that experiences the results of karma. It is the self that is the agent of an action. And therefore, in order to truly negate grasping at this self, one also needs to negate the grasping at the consciousness, which is the basis of that notion of self and person.
Sanje Jumden Namdang, Chanju Saba Chobu Tedam Ki, Sheso Digi, Guzu Chanju Sem Pomia, Tiswimbre.
So then the text reads, after that, just as the blessed Buddhas and the great Bodhisattvas have generated the mind of great awakening and so on, so from that point onwards, then Nagarjuna presents the conventional Bodhichitta, the meditation on the conventional awakening mind.
다 루루랑 송 마 이게 최저다 좀바 담자도 송차래 제라 셜로가 니베 제다 셜로가 니베들이 셜로가 니베들라 디도바 산제남지 창주심 다도 풍소 능력이 똑바르게 멋지바 신 소야데 산제남기 아니 터도 공부 단담 창주 생기 유동번이데 아니 다당 풍소 능력이 똑바르게 멋지바 써야 되기 모두에 다도 따에 똑바 대만 되니기 가서 그게 풍소 된주도 준비 된적이 똑바 되네 능력이 아니 난 즈바 된주도 똑바 되는 게 멋지바 하나 송진기 최 탐제 아니 정신이 동해 동반이 돼 아니 산제남기 산제의 신주선반 남기 말했다 산제남기 전주선 가서 그게 터두디 아니 최 탐제 정신이 동해 동이 됐어 시기야래 소임다 이슈데 쇼로가 숨버되기 닝지 렘베 sem지니 매매 공부를 차와인스 된대기 동이 떡별로 대장식 단어를 줬으면 차려야 말해 돈이 무슨도 떡배 돈이라 니난 너베 돈이 무슨도 떡배 믿어 이시지 차샤나야 대장기 단어를 줬으면 차려야 말해 단담 창조 줬으면 차봐라 돈이 무슨도 떡별로 되니 탑 창조 줬으면 있으면 좋고요 아래 아니 단어 창조 줬으면 차려야 해 근데 이 이르산에 닝지 렘베 sem지니 매매 공부를 차와인스 투지 등이 산계기 창조심도 따도 또 대대별 근데 창조심 단어 창조심 대 아니 가서 냠신자를 소하다.
So then when Nagarjuna in his own words comments on the Buddha's teaching on awakening mind in the stanza 1, he makes the salutation to the Buddha, and then in stanza 2 he actually makes the presentation, and here it reads, the Buddhas maintain the awakening mind to be not obscured by such conceptions as self, aggregates, consciousness, and so on. It is always characterized by emptiness. So here, what Nagarjuna is presenting is that the awakening mind, which is here the ultimate awakening mind, which is a direct realization of emptiness, is such that it is devoid of any conceptions of notion of self. Here he is negating the non-Buddhist notion of Atman. And then when he talks about conceptions of aggregates, here he is negating the Buddhist schools such as Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, who present the notion of the real existence of aggregates. And the notion, when he says that it is devoid of the conception of consciousness, here he is negating the position of the mind-only school, and then says that the true nature of this bodhicitta is really emptiness. And then, however, this realization of emptiness alone and does not become ultimate awakening mind, does not become bodhicitta. Therefore, he writes in the next stanza, which is stanza 3, he says that it is with the mind moistened by compassion that you must cultivate the awakening mind with effort. So the point being made here is that the ultimate awakening mind is a direct realization of emptiness, which is complemented or reinforced by bodhicitta, the awakening, altruistic awakening mind. So Therefore, he writes, the Buddhas who embody great compassion constantly develop this awakening mind.
Oh, yeah. 다데네 쇼로가 10번에만 무디분 더 가거든요.
So then, from stanza 4 onwards, Nagarjuna is presenting the critique of the non-Buddhist views.
다 대양 말하는 로 행질이야. 아주 로를 쉬어도 와. 나나 로 개베 그도기 풍부디 그 중치베 걸이야. 뒤에 삼바치 정민도 봐. 그 갈래갈래 풍부야. 개치 친데베지. 아주 로를 쉬어도 와. 다른 신기 변화 다대 지금 다 냠용 싸대봐. 지금 로중 제시베 시바디 중치베 걸이 여삼바지 배지 정민도 봐. 그 루스민 이브디 도슨 요두고 되지. 아주 로를 쉬어야 와. 다이네 나 슬르자네. 나 깨베 그도네 전에. 나 찍을지 로를 쉬어도 와. 자상가 루스민 이브디 두메랑 신으로도 무슨 요원도 돼야지. 나슬도 찍을 타만에 와 예되지 로를 쉬어도 와. 뒤찍체. 니네 루스니슬도 나한테 롱자자. 나서야지 루스니 더기를 송에 롱접어보 저로 쉬어도. 자상가 저도 롱접어보티 아니 즉 잔남 지금 방대비 아니 롱자자라 파땡신 말이지. 추담 봐도. 저 드리인도 롱저로 쉬어도. 저 드리인도 전에다 아니 대탈이야 지금 겨운 것이 정해진데 연구협에 있는 자네 루스민 이부터 가가다 륜디 상금에 류다 센디 류베 가가이마다 쓰되는 신세로 저다 쉐바슬럽네 류들 템베 쉐바 차이는 자네 배질 가가 통되도 근데 네이버 있는 자네 쉐바 참면 남샤지 마샤나 가고도 와 저 네이버 있는 자네 다 나만은 들어오네 니네 치문동에 그 다지 요구 그래서 다 풍불 때만 매쟁에 풍불에 된 셴베 다지 고도 두지 되거인 거야. 다르신 맞이 예배 두지디 배는 내 미기 숙통인데 자네 미기 통소 삼아서 로를 미천바 로를 미샤와 로래야 내 통삼아서 로를 셔도 믹소디디 통식 고럽시 통계 뭐한테 나서야 돼 통계 들지 맞아 로를 해결 셔도 어다 두지디 이게 통하네 풍불에 된 셴베 다 요하세요 돼.
So, if you kind of think more deeply about the basis of the non-Buddhist views about the notion of self, in fact, we can relate to our own personal experience when we examine the way in which we, in our naive kind of understanding, the way in which we perceive our own existence as individuals and as self, we know that if we think about our own continued existence with relation to body, we intuitively or have a notion that body ages. For example, if you are already grown up or a certain age in your point in your life, you don't have that feeling that this body is the same body that I had when I was a kid. So you do kind of naturally accept the aging process of your body. Similarly, with relation to the mind, if you think about the current state of your mind, which has already benefited from long experience of going through formal education and so on, again here, we don't feel that this the mature mind that I have is the same mind that I had when I was a kid. So with relation to body and mind, we have a sense that it is continuous, it is multiple and so on. So, however, when we relate to our own notion of self, it seems to be quite different. When we think about ourselves, we immediately, for example, if we try to recall our experience from a very early childhood, you say, when I was at that time. So we use the same term I and extend it across this span of time and assume as if there is this one individual that passed through this temporal passage. So So unlike body and mind, when it comes to the notion of self, we have this notion of a unity. We feel there is only one thing. So therefore, we can understand why philosophers would attribute this oneness or unity to the characteristic of self. Similarly, when we observe our body and mind, we can feel that this body is mine, and this, I have this thought and emotions and so on. So we feel as if, over and above our body and mental processes, there is someone or something called me or self that is the owner of, or that is the bearer of these experiences, that is the owner, that somehow to whom these kind of processes belong to. And so we feel that since this self or the person is the owner or controller of these processes depend upon the self, but not vice versa. The self is somehow independent of this. So in this in this way, we can see that the philosophical idea of self as a unitary, unchanging, and independent can be how these kind of philosophical views arises. Similarly, these non-Buddhist schools argue that there must be something called self, because when you see something with your eyes, instinctively you do not feel that my eyes sees this thing, but rather instinctively the thought arises, I see this thing. So therefore, we have a sense that somehow our senses are like doors or avenues through which we experience the world. And there is something called self that, engages with the world through these doors, which are the senses. So it's for these kind of reasons, non-Buddhist classical Indian schools postulate a notion of an eternal, independent self.
Sholoka Shibadiki, Mutijan Kangdawa, Dada Ribian Namjana, Punam Gunji Nanam, Kanshin, Niemain, that Shasama Sunche. The issue with the Sholoka Kubadigi, Kadding Murni, Kaddi that the Kanshis pageant, Dechasusto, Kanshir, Murni, Damindi, Murnam Dado, Gejishir, Kanshir Mida, Mobola, Chabakoni Kawame, Satigi. Da then they any. Takshi Rama Taji, any Shabayina, Tadi, Jumere, any Pungu Jura Tene, Dal and Jua, on the Shako, Tanya. Nashinutula, Nakavutula, Nan Navakarusen, Shedua. That dish is an Nate Pungula. Tene Yudavich self shadow. Pungu Turgula Dene, not Turgushaya. Pungu Ganshuna Dene, not Ganshaya. A Pungu Demaditone, not Demadishaya. But Masiadi, Pungu tension by Yanga Shibayina, Lun now, not now, and Tanya Shashima, the Shadua. So the Libby is a young answer, not Sameton, sometime, Masiadi. Listen, you should dead, which is 7 to 1. So the day is an Sanjay Carson was down. Nasa Pungule Tene, Shares, Pungula Tene, that was. She's a son of Sasson and she got a Pungula Tene, my shares. The day in the Pungula Temege, Maranja, Yamaris. Nga Medawaji Shai Pung Nga Kangla Danish Dase Pungudi Medawari, Teletana Takbe Nadia Medawari, Dinre Indu, Dugsiran Da Kegbe, any Chevabu Kea Yomaris, Medagber, Takbe Chevabu Kebare Mado, Medagber and Shiki Chevabu Kea Yomaris, not Shudi. Kansin Muni, Damindi, Muno Datu Gishir, Kansin Midang Mobola, Chevabu Nikaba, long Jabba, long Jaja, Pungso, Didi, Shadow rays. Just one.
So, as mentioned earlier, from verse 4, Nagarjuna is critiquing the non-Buddhist school's view of self. And then in verse 9, we read, if it were an entity, it would not be permanent, for entities are always momentary. And with respect to impermanent entities, agency has not been negated. So what Nagarjuna is stating here in the concluding verse in this particular section is that, if, as non-Buddhist schools postulate, self is eternal, unchanging, and independent, then how can, the relationship between this self, which is supposedly unchanging, and the aggregates, the physical and the mental elements, which are constantly changing, how can the relationship between the two be accounted for? So Nagarjuna argues that just as the body and mind goes through a process of change, therefore self, or the notion of person that is designated upon the body and mind, too must undergo change. And in fact, according to Nagarjuna, he argues that if we carefully examine the way in which the notion of self operates in us, there is a recognition of this. For example, when we talk about, when I was young, when I was old, when I was sick, and when I was happy, and so on, unhappy. So here, what is happening is that the attributes of the physical and mental states, whether they belong to, whether they were young or old or sick or well, all of these attributes are also becomes attributes of the person, the self that is being designated. So therefore, Nagarjuna explains that if the self, on the other hand, is completely independent, then how can this independent self interact with the physical and mental processes that together make up the existence of this individual? So therefore, what the Buddhist teaching explains is that the reality of self, the existence of self and person, can only be understood in terms of something that is contingent, something that is dependent upon the physical and mental aggregates, mental processes. Therefore, just as the physical and the mental aggregates are impermanent, the self or the person that is designated upon these processes too are impermanent. And then Nagarjuna explains that, however, having rejected this eternal self that is independent, that does not, by implication, also negate the existence of the person, existence of some kind of agency. So that's why he writes that, and with respect to impermanent entities, agency has not been negated. So he's saying that although self as an agent that is independent has been negated, one can still maintain the notion of an agency or a person that is impermanent.
다소 제 직된디 다 쇼로가 주버시 쇼로가 주버는마 뜻이라면 다 요마레스 다 소소도 되게 다다 하사다 셰리게도 가사 주고 소다 강사사 든지디 얘네 풍불이 된신배 든지 요마레스 다소 되게 풍복한데 송질로 인정만 주었어 풍급 계시기 최 랑생이 주고 샤샤바 대 뭐다 태양 뭐 십두잖아 아니 로이 점바디 리베 네무레스 제니다 담아대니인데 바데 까용이야래 제니다 풍속의 최상말로 아니 네更你超给大多样送你我等着呢超去出问的写说送你哎叔叔确定的长毛老人呢开始我这个怎么都送给要这些去但是想的地是啥现在他的第想的小老个我的小老个你是小老个你是这个字你说小老个你是这个字的 Sundan Zimbe Moye, Namshi Nawa Kanyamba, Namshi Lene Tadevar, Chiru Turning Gayam Mix. Da Sunzingi, Soso Shayung Yare, Sword Zimba, Tadevar, Lord Shayung Yare, Yahu Sound Tabaina, so much return to Mojuvari, that takes of that, Shebe, Dani to Yare, so the Sheba, that had a don, Jenny, that Numri, Tawa di Sheni, Tamadini, Casuri, so into Shashas, that's so much Chami Sani, so to the guy, the Gavata.
So then from verse 10, we read, "This world, devoid of self and so on, is utterly vanquished by the notions of aggregates, elements, and the sense fields, and that of object and subject." So here, self and so on includes all the characteristics that are generally used to, sort of the terms that are used to refer to the individual or the person. So the person, the individual, the being, and so on. And so Nagarjuna, having negated the notion of self and Atman, then goes on to negate the views of the Buddhist schools, as explained before. Here, particularly the real existence of aggregates, elements, and so on. So this section of the text goes on up to verse 22.
21.
Now, so in the version that has been printed here, there is one extra stanza, which is stanza number 16. So when His Holiness says 21, ours is 22. So
under day you deve Jurugudi, Sudu Wanshi came in the Tenny Wombu Lady, do you say so? Cholo Chiche.
Di Gande Dido. Sudu Leshin Wangbo Mess. Sudu Leshin Wangbo Me, Chebu Wangbo Shindume, Kebabo the Kebata, Yanda Keba Rigmais. Taramsalan and Lazola Parjabus did not. Kavan and Raven.
Shan cousin Eddie, cousin the inviting the Devon, Mitin Javati. Did the Chilamadato, Chilamadato Chimpage, did Alan Dams too. The
version that His Holiness is using is from the Tengur and Derke edition, and when he compared it against Smriti Janakirti's commentary of this text, it seems to go really well with the root text in Tengur. So the version one here has an extra stanza. So in verse 22 of our version, it reads, "In terms of objects and subjects, whatever appears to the consciousness apart from cognitions themselves, no external object exists anywhere." So what Nagarjuna is presenting the critique of the view of reality of classical Indian Buddhist schools, the realist schools, Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, from the point of view of the mind-only school. And then, therefore, he writes that apart from the cognitions themselves, no external objects exist anywhere.
Yeah. That is that shaloga nishzubshi. Some shaloga nishzubshi, Dadun Zibo Dogaji, Pumbu Kamso Dabayin she. Dagji Rang, Da Pumbula Tenshaba Yamari, Da said the Pumbula Dene Shapazamre, Sisanata, Pungso Chedi, Rangsen Tubashi, Shisha, Sungsha she. So Dadun Zibo Dogaji, Pumbu Kamso Dabayin, this one. Samson Bolonene, Gazin the Tang Banks. That dinner to the coma, Samsabeta, Tumdalia, Shune, Samsabet to the Tone, the little Zibatin to the cake, Zibatin to Mari, Zibatin to Ray, Marzibatin to Mari, the Swatin to the car, cake, car. So, number shape of Mawala, then you sang it, number shape of Mawala, not only the simple to Shenny. That did Hamjalo, 70 tiny race, that's Dinama Shenny, and 다 섬점에 내가 뒤송 거 야래 다 조조 섬 된주 다 된주 샤용이 있잖아요 다 섬점에 슝드스 나로라 배나 초랑도 최다의 슝드스 참외 슝 소차的야래 섬점에 정리디 조용도가 개처부지니 가르스는 샤자 주버디 제지 타네 제지를 하래 제지디 참여 주야디 정식 타네 주야지 손도가 사실은 인도산에 참여나서 샤인도산에 신리의 정식사 니치니 디관에다 송도가 다 드리면 인도산에 아다시 남시 조송네 아니 남시 주지디 참아디 샤인도 정식 샤 다 도스도요래 제니
So then in verse 25 we read that to overcome grasping at selfhood, the Buddha taught aggregates, elements and so on, and by abiding in the state of mind only, the beings of great fortune even renounced that teaching. So what is being presented here is a progressive development of the view, so that you, in the first stage, you reject the non-Buddhist notion of selfhood, and then, accept the reality of aggregates and so on, and then from the perspective of the mind-only teachings, you negate even the real existence of these aggregates as well. And then from verse 26 we read, for those who propound consciousness only, this manifold world is established as mind. What might be the nature of that consciousness? I shall now explain this very point. So, from this point onwards, Nagarjuna is presenting the mind-only school's understanding of the nature of reality. So, in mind-only school, having rejected the real existence of external world of matter, they accept the true existence of consciousness, and therefore, in this particular school, understanding the reality of the consciousness becomes very crucial, and it is in this particular school many great masters of the Buddhist epistemological tradition, such as Dignaga and Dharmakirti, belong to. And if you look at the Dignaga and Dharmakirti's writing, the whole epistemological system is built upon making a distinction between perceptions of the external world versus a perception or self-cognizing awareness. And so since the reality of the external world or the validity of our perception is grounded in the validity of the perceptions themselves, the validity of the perceptions are then grounded in a quality that is attributed to these perceptions, which is a self-cognizing faculty. And in this way, the reality of consciousness or mind is established in this school.
Yeah. So that umbedas for sense of pakka in the chane that dinama and the bana nistorugote dida tamje sense of tube tamba 강제 집어는 게 저번에 빵에 치 디니민 전 너도 사주거든 너도 랑거 너 무슨 너도 사주야 롱데야 가서 그렇게 가사식 셈내심에 쳐보고 다 과야 된다로 셈잠 숨을 해서 되게 내루요래 다가다 랑거시번도 그 치카를 돼 치료 나오면 돼서 되미요 어든지 다 도든지 열다 치료 가셔든지 데즈테디 거배왕 송해스 투베 템바 강제디 집어는 이제 저번에 빵에 친 디니민 전에 도 빼는 너도 공지되고 나라 아니 向往点出生活的话，可是没办法给写的这样的，第三个是多的，杨大门滚到越是越贴切的，这边的拿了，英英在是这边的拿了呀，干啥？杨大门被向往，杨他说的马上被向往的写， 양다 머인 사데 마다베 샹와데 샹네 양다 머인 마다베 샹와 군도디 예세实际上呢越下的了呀因人的这边哪里呀人性下边的这个他们是啊越下边的他也都越把这种叫嘛的是人性越把的现在因人这边呢就送的话到社会休息的话他家的话加上个양다 머인 군도 요 달래 니부 예 머인 동반이는 들어요 달래는 대유도 신다 송샤 되게 다 청지 마 바지라고 좀 돈요 좀 걸어라샤 단단 님부디 마다베 상황이 랑승이 조인 송도와 시바랑승이 조시 저 지상가 디콩리야 아니 룽 줍지도 거네 다 도저히 룽도 저 거네 연구하는데 우마베 될바다 랜교인데 좀 더 내가 송여 말했으면 됐지 좀 더 내가 송여데 이네데 거배왕 송레스 that is 송여.
So then in verse stanza 27 we read, all of this is but one's mind. That which was stated by the able one is to elevate the fear of the childish. It is not a statement of final truth. So here Nagarjuna is critiquing the mind-only school's view. And so of course in the Buddha's sutras, such as the 10 Levels Sutra Dashabhumika, although which has different interpretation, and also in Langa Avatara, and Descent to Langa Sutra, there are statements which explicitly reject the reality of the external world and establishes the truth of mind only. So similarly, if you look at Vasubandhu's commentary on differentiation of the middle and the extremes, which is in Maitriya's text, there is a particular stanza where Vasubandhu, when he explains comments upon this, he explicitly states that the statement which says that the thought processes that are deluded, distorted, do exist, and here he says that it's not merely a matter of existence, but also the notion of existence is intrinsic existence. So the point is that in Vasubandhu's writing, it is very clearly stated that according to mind-only school, consciousness and the cognitions and the mental processes do possess real intrinsic existence. And so in Nagarjuna and Madhyamaka, when they critique the mind-only school, they do not do so by saying that the Buddha never taught the mind-only. The critique is, yes, the Buddha taught this teaching in the various sutras, such as also in the Samdhinirmochana Sutra, which is the sutra unraveling the intention of the Buddha, where the teaching on emptiness is explained in terms of contextualizing different meanings of emptiness. So the Nagarjuna says that it's not that Buddha did not teach mind only, but he's saying that these teachings that the Buddha gave do not represent the final truth. They were taught for a specific purpose. Therefore, he writes, it is to elevate the fear of the childish, and it is not a statement of final truth.
태신 가외等于了 철을 담에 냐바니 섬니 되면 섬니 되는 마게디 상계계는 노트송스 낭 즈버 섬대야 대만이네 정신이 모조래 송야레스.
So then in stanza 29, Nagarjuna writes that the Buddha has taught that even the mind too is emptiness. So therefore he writes, to those who delight in the great vehicle, the Buddha taught in brief, selfless in perfect equanimity, and that the mind is primordially unborn.
다 드라마 패시 팀다 군시 다 룽그전라가 섬자베 강자가 천시 샤연도 전에 군시남시 사시게요. 시벌 룽고된 시행고요. 간다지 세미기 내가 뭐고 여배인도 전에 고념 세미 내가들이 여배인도 드즈 내가로 이 강사 매번 차도 sem코라 이시버디 강사를 샤베이나 강사 천시를 샤베이나 저 디데인도 전에다 야 내가 그뒤에 다고 유여대하로 지기 군시남도 셔봐서 아직 시행고요. 저어다 딩과야 송샤 패시 인설이 다 나가는 신기 렁리디 송용거야 다 땡과야 송샤 다 쇼데 렁루기 한데 딘다 숨주 소주고 숨주 말에 숨주 쏠게버들이샤 숨주 쏠게버디 다 백숨 쏘고디 숨주 쏘고디 셰베 시저 또버디 시저 매버 셰베메 대단하니 릭지당 릭지 매지 면도스 다 어디기 단단님부터 뒤송이었으래 자질 내송데 요아레스 자질 내송 때베거네 요아레스 다가는 신기 아니 세좀 줘야 돼 아니 샤자라 때네 제지 참아라 때네 샤자 편주 때네 저리스 다디 우무주고디 다시 주거라는데 식세는 다시 세우시 송도가 어다 데리샤 편주 때네 저버지 셰디산에 샤자다 제지세야디 편주 때네 저리스 저는 어다 렁루기 뒤송이하래 샤자 제지 참 샤자 주지 참아체 참아 주지 렁리게 샤모 참아 샤자라 때네 참아 때네 샤자 주야 샤
Then from stanza 30, Nagarjuna is critiquing a principal tenet of the mind-only school, which is the notion of alaya, the foundational consciousness. And the reason for postulating this notion of alaya or foundational consciousness is to really search for the true identity of the person. And since there are many mindless states of existence, such as when one is fainting and when one is in deep cessation and so on, the mind-only school maintains that there must be an eighth consciousness which retains its continuity, and therefore, because if we take the continuum of consciousness to be the basis of the personal existence, then in states of unconsciousness, when there are no conscious experience, then there will be no person. The continuity of the person will be broken. So this is the reason why mind-only school postulates the notion of alaya, foundational consciousness. So this notion is being negated by Nagarjuna. Similarly, the notion of self-cognizing awareness, which is this perceptive attribute of consciousness, this is also negated. Then finally in stanza 39, Nagarjuna writes, the cognizer perceives the cognizable. Without the cognizable, there is no cognition. Therefore, why do you not admit that neither object nor subject exist at all? So what Nagarjuna is stating here is that when we have notions such as the object and subject, cognizer and the cognized object, these are concepts that are that arises on the basis of mutual relationship. It is not the case that the perception verifies the object, and the perception itself is verified by a third kind of factor, which is the self-cognizing awareness. Therefore, Nagarjuna is saying that just as in the case of agency, act, and the object of action, all these three elements of an action are mutually dependent and mutually defined. In the same manner, cognition and the cognized object are mutually defined. One cannot define one without the other. So through mutual dependence, one can maintain these notions. So this is what Nagarjuna is presenting here in stanza 39. And this notion of mutual dependence is very clearly presented in Chandrakirti's commentary on Mula Madhyamaka Karika, which is the clear words.
런시 동거를 쓰게 하면 또 가야 매주 런시 동거를 쓰고 말아. 저 근데 인도 체달 홍야 말이지. 때네 매스고 말이지. 때네 매버지는 시지기 땡기 제주 춘이 있을씩 말아. 다음에 때미라고. 다음에디 동리 런신 두주에 건시 차벌 마음이지. 동시 시전 요식도. 동번이 단당 어머니 자시는 나서는 이제 땡진 저번 중앙가 되는 동번이도 셰신 땡진 저번 중앙 강연부 대 아니 런시 동배 다래 신 소윤도 그 지기 예당 그 샤나 라는 예배 인상 샤나 라마레베 런신지 동래 신 소윤도 그 동배 거와 야우차베이나 예배지 거유도 저 되는 이미 있잖아요 거시 차벌 마음이지 되네 딱반이도야 거시마 보면 이노 다 선잠배东西向往跟大个东北东里永住的将你向往的永住你不的定住谁是吧是吧但这没有吧东北你的对呢下过来定这没有啥呢东北你送过多是的这没有啥呢看到呢告诉嘞这边呢东你定住要嘛的가다 런시 동바 인도자 동바샤 인도자네 땅바로 마야 말해 동바니 딘루도 되바야 말해 딘데 임베 인도자네 아니 예미게 탄이도 차와래 서지 송이 그래
Then in stanza 58 which is on page 10 we read when one speaks of emptiness as the nature of phenomena one in no sense propounds nihilism. So the point Nagarjuna is making here is that the teaching on emptiness presents all phenomena to be empty because they are dependent, because they are devoid of independent nature. So therefore, emptiness is presented as the true nature of things. And because they are true nature of things, and there are phenomena whose true nature we can talk about. So therefore, the teaching on emptiness does not constitute a form of nihilism, because here we are talking about emptiness as being the ultimate nature of things. And this is, of course, presented very clearly in Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom of the middle way, Mula Madhyamaka Karika, where he explains the meaning of emptiness in terms of dependent origination, when he says that that which is dependently originated, that has been taught to be empty. So here he equates the meaning of dependent emptiness with dependent origination. So therefore, since emptiness is the ultimate nature of things, therefore the teaching on emptiness does not constitute a form of nihilism. And similarly, Nagarjuna writes that by the same token, one does not propound eternalism either. So what Nagarjuna is presenting here is that this emptiness, which is the ultimate nature of things, itself is not truly existent. Itself is dependently originated. So unlike the mind-only school, where having rejected the imputed nature, they attribute true existence to emptiness. Whereas in the Nagarjuna's teaching, not only are phenomena empty, but also emptiness of phenomena is also emptiness. Therefore, one speaks of emptiness. And because of this, and there is also no danger of falling into eternalism. So in this way, the teaching on emptiness guards one from both the extremes of absolutism and nihilism.
Tadi shude marignism kawai thodu yana juni ji shaso sungni tenin junwe chawan kominum gyudde so ta umabe any tanyegi any kinji bana kiji kndreslavna tanyebe chu kndreslavna and de chi nange tende de chi tende ni sore nange 주기 semjengi kichi diidi tenji devan jo ran shi jikso chi tenji slone semi pembushe diidi du de gen samla tenji junwe tenji jikso sa denga di chig de chan sa da chig de lemi de ju anda 장제 동거하면 언제나 디스통이야. 다 지금지야 누구도 아니야. 지금은 내 랑수 체면로야. 진짜 그래서 치드 머시비 루스 미그台湾 대니는 계긴 저식 런리 모주장 차셜 타입 넘리 마와는 계긴 저식 랑생 모주장 댄지 짜베 실sun 캠본남 계긴 저식 야도가 다한테 이게 풍속 최대면에 연구만 해서 다 우주 접대야지 치든 시간 지금은 누우시네 다 치든 니고도 우시네 치든 니야가 된다리야 아니 참에 쉬어요 봐 그래서 다 오모바 데 고물루고 투모마이 오메로 다 오메베 쉐바리야 치든 가금도 봐 다 오메베 나는 치든 강에 줘요 할때 얘네 빼면서 그 야오래 치든 많이 해야지 땅든 새는 많이 벌어 땅든 새는 많이 벌지 난 짐벌에 찍버려서 난 짐벌야 땅든 새는 많이 벌지 매월 샤워 주면 저 가면 매월 자로 그래서 난 짐벌 땅든 새는 미니 벌지 이제 마다 맞으면 안에 명상기 짐벌 샤 전화 치든야 땅든 새는 이야 말대 마다 맞으면 안에 치든 샤 줘 그래서 숨진 이유도 타녀도 연념 된다 말 매년 샤서 자상가 치든 뭐시고 루스미 그스 딘지서 다 센서베 정리 그 타네 다 지금 우주 때문에 시작해야 돼 세면으로 다다 샤진 제지가 남샤 디다 개처부터 숨부여 있잖아요 다 디타네 정리도 죽고요 봐 자상가 정리 모두 저 차셔 타베 되게 쉬어야 돼 참아도 시작 때는 저 사용이 있잖아요 정리 게 시작공도 와 이내 정리 간에 시작 제지가 남샤 뚜뚜 데모 전 샤토바 있잖아요 남리 마도 투제마나스 나 우모버 타녀도 랑서 시행인지 타녀도라고 생이 뭐 죽나 단용문에 주변 최신 매는 매바라 차용기 아니 땡제 양라 주니 사주의 연구민도 세네다 내가 들려는 거 알아 산다 디견민도 랑제 뭐 죽장 땡제 따스 식성 캠보는 계진서 시세네 어디로 손에 저자 되는 오늘도 왔다 안데 디디 고모고모디도 막다 고모고모에 지 견지 통이 견지 세야 된다라 지 더 락바직 직시다 마샤감이 차오르와 와다 띠견현이야 말이지 엄마베다 반단 가서 올때 고물루르고 싶어 투모 모임 봐 다 산재장다 다 잡에 째셔 봐 상당연데 그 균음에 지 차는 거 리베나가 켜내면 되지 리베나가 켜내면 돼 등진은 푸는 내 통해 지 들으시도 봐 현在个主动毛子大学的大面的시부지 잡아서는 또서 맞아요 돼요. 다가 나신 게 den지 처음에 캐면 돼야지. den지 랑박 캐가 돼 연구. den지 처음에 캐면 되지 연구 양아도. 저 상무 양호 상무에는 다 되는 거는 전혀 레샤 상무지가 생기 땡네. 즉 저로 가야지. 그다음에 제가 돈이 더 야말다. 돈이 또도 치면 사실다. 돈이 더 야말에. 얘네도 서르잖아. 맨로 상무지. 다 랩집이 연대기야. 자 리메 있잖아요. 그 더그스기다. 저로 춘주칸에 직도가 섬나 지금 소마 맨라지 정도가. 어디를 드셔. 자 동니사데 다 시다 먼저 가서래. 고물로 줄어서 그 프로페서즈 다 아주 숨을 살게 되면도 봐. 때문에 자네 먼저 니리 쳐야 나로 쉬우지 너희도 그러셔.
So we read in stanza 59, starting with ignorance and ending with aging, all processes that arise from the 12 links of dependent origination, we accept them to be like a dream and like an illusion. So here Nagarjuna is explaining that while rejecting any notion of true existence in the teaching of emptiness, one can still maintain a robust and coherent notion of reality. And here he explains reality in terms of dependent origination pertaining to the external world, and dependent origination pertaining to the internal world of sentient beings. And of course, the origination of sentient beings is explained in terms of the 12 links, of the Buddha's teaching, 12 rings of dependent origination. So here, the key principle that is being invoked is the principle of cause and effects. So on the basis of the law of cause and effects, Doji wrote a text called Songs on the View, Recognizing My Mother's Face, or Recognizing My Mother, in which he wrote the following stanza, which of course
here, mother in the sense,
emptiness.
The emptiness.
Yeah.
Emptiness is the ultimate nature of everything. So you see, he refer mother.
So in which he, referring to each of the different views of the Buddhist schools, he wrote the following, although the stanza themselves, my recitation of them may not be the exact words, but in the following he writes that given that kind of a conventional notion of external reality can be maintained, therefore the masters of Vaibhashika and Sautrantika do not need to worry too much, because they're having rejected the notion of independent self. For the Vaibhashikas and Sautrantikas, the two Buddhist schools, it was very important to have a robust notion of the world of existence. So therefore they attribute the reality to elementary particles and so on, as we discussed earlier. So what Chankhya is saying is that since one can have a robust notion of these external world without grounding their reality in the ultimate eternal kind of indivisible constitutive elements, therefore they do not need to worry, these masters do not need to worry. Then talking to the mind-only school masters, he says that although one without accepting the notion of this apperceptive self-cognizing faculty, one can still maintain a coherent notion of subject and object, cognition and the cognized object. Therefore, the mind-only school masters need not worry too much. And then he moves on and says that to those Madhyamaka, middle way philosophers who insist on some notion of intrinsic reality on the conventional level, he says they too need not worry, because despite rejecting any notion of intrinsicness, one can still maintain a coherent understanding of the world of dependent origination. So the masters of the Svatrantika, Madhyamaka, need not worry. So, so what Chankhya is saying here is that if one truly understands the teachings of Nagarjuna, particularly in the unique way in which it has been read by Indian masters like Buddha Palita and Chandrakirti, then one will have a very deep understanding of the final meaning of emptiness, where not even a trace of grasping is left at any notion of objective intrinsic existence. Yet at the same time, within that view, there is a robust, coherent notion of reality within which cause and effect and all conventions operate. Therefore, so if one really examines carefully, one can really come to recognize that in the teaching of Nagarjuna, there is truly the method and the antidote to counter our innate, deeply ingrained grasping at selfhood, deeply ingrained grasping at real existence. And yet at the same time, one does not slide into a form of nihilism. Rather, one maintains a robust notion of reality. And at the same time, Nagarjuna's teachings are completely free of any faults, and they can be completely supported by reasoning. So when you think along those lines, of course I'm not claiming that I have realized emptiness, but I can say that I've kind of tasted it, so at least a little bit. So when you dwell deeply on the true meaning of emptiness, and when you begin to have a little taste of it, then clearly when you hear words like emptiness, it conjures and evokes in you a completely different experience. And therefore, so otherwise, one may misunderstand the teachings of the Nagarjuna, because the teachings of Nagarjuna, someone like Nagarjuna, cannot be seen, seen as any kind of academic professor who was developing some kind of speculative views. But rather, Nagarjuna's teaching on emptiness are teachings that have direct relevance to our own experience and our own quest for enlightenment.
Yeah. That is what it is. Did you turn it? Did you turn so in? Down in this lemon, the Chukju, did you somebody? Did you somebody? There was some Shivani, some Shivani, Mommy, Tini Tobati, Tini Tobe, 12 top jurors. Someday, did you turn in the Kanda Tuni Mishiva, Tata Tabe Demai, Duru Sibe Journey, Mobatata, Coin.
So then I will single out the next two stanzas. Stanza 70, which is on page 12, it reads, "A happy mind, it is tranquil indeed. A tranquil mind is not confused. To have no confusion is to understand the truth. By understanding the truth, one attains freedom." And then later on in stanza 72, we read, "Those who do not understand emptiness are not receptive vehicles for liberation. Such ignorant beings will revolve in the existence prison of 6 classes of beings." So with this, up to this point, that the teaching on the ultimate bodhicitta or ultimate awakening mind has been presented. So then from stanza 73 onwards, the conventional bodhicitta or conventional awakening mind is being presented.
Altruism.
So this is what I referred to as altruism at the beginning of opening remarks.
다 점방배 자외연대 타이도 지금 즉 사무직 거용 지금 예발 신이 되잖아요. 다 랑도 총바 다 난게 태도 besimje 수도 수이네 몽배 상황도 규제버디 되게 규를 여대 몽바디 데루인 버지다 달은 못 담대 여버시 로 샤연데 지 동해든 젠드로 동해를 좀 되고로 그 내용도 와 내야지도 와 저 뒤에 인도산에 So
then in stanza 73 we read, "When this emptiness, as explained, is thus meditated upon by yogis, no doubt there will arise in them a sentiment attached to others' welfare." So what Nagarjuna is saying here is that once you have deeper understanding of the meaning of emptiness, then you will come to recognize that there is a possibility of purifying the pollutants of the mind. And so once you come to recognize the possibility of purifying the pollutants of the mind, then a genuine aspiration to seek that freedom, which is freedom from the pollutants of the mind, arises in you. And when you recognize that, you will then recognize that in all the other beings who are entrapped in the cycle of existence, the root cause of their cyclic existence is this ignorant mind grasping at self-existence, in inherent existence. And however, this ignorance, which is the root cause of samsara, is a distorted state of mind which can be removed, which can be eliminated, and there exists a powerful antidote to eliminate it. So once you recognize that, then genuine compassion for all beings who are entrapped in cycle of existence because of the ignorance arises in you. That's why Nagarjuna writes that no doubt there will arise in them a sentiment attached to others' welfare.
나중에 서로가 둔주디 Jigden Dendro Nandroye, Dada Minju Debuti, Semjanola Pambadan, Neverland Jones. Semjan Tempe Sanje, Govan Lami, Ninjuna, Hadame, Lonjoga, Sando Ombu Tabuda. Jigden Jones, Dendada, Semja, Pambazam Shiki, Matambani to some Gayam Mero, Sarchius. Tation to Semia Tundu Ida Suseta, Adaching Andrew, Nalakia di and a Semjan Nevin Debutis. Shani, da. Shana Papaduna, Rangla, Nego the Tadugi, Digi Tada Dutia. Sometimes never Chana, Nego the Tadu, that Tadu Mab Pashani, Chadu Inaya, the Mojibo Korang on Dogwatch. Tom Javundu, Junjugi, Dr. Shenji Tungeta, Yanda Jawar Machana, Sanja need to Mindrujan, Kawana, Dewan, Mays and Taja Delisha. The Hanchanju some lodge Johnny, some was down by Ina. 대외 경계 근세에 전주성계 따시는 되는 대화는 더 심시수시 기록으로 송샤 되더라. 자, 드리인데 뭐냐라다 철도 남지기 싫어지 이렇게. 성부 야오지 땅배이나 동리가 따와 되게 좌체배 동리가 따와 들 때네 청주서야지 예봐. 디지털로 실리. 동엔 대루이 뭐지. 다 되네. 현대 되니로 장네. 현대 제시 방법으로 dakshang nyamche kwa da jinzini ki kyanda yanda da samdang yu zane yani shandi tuanyi ki loji lehi kudu wa da dini sungdu dheni rotoba shungna yan da kiwen go tsuwa dheni dewa rowa la simshi sushi kilungu sadiri yani dindiji yu zane kashi droshindu chisi nanga naibadam rowa chisi naijuwa disi dani naijuwa roya dunga sangwa shong sa da melam kiyo samda jan yundu kibudu wa So we
read in stanza 76, the fruits which are desirable or undesirable in the form of fortunate or unfortunate births in the world, they come about from helping the sentient beings or harming them. If by relying upon the sentient beings, the unexcelled state of Buddhahood is brought about, so what is so astonishing about the fact that whatever prosperities there are in the gods and humans, such as those enjoyed by Brahma, Indra and Rudra, and the worldly guardians of the world, there is nothing in this triple world system that is not brought forth by helping others. So, and the text goes on. But what Nagarjuna is explaining here is that in reality, anything that pertains to our experience of happiness, anything that is good in the world, either directly or indirectly, results or consequences of actions and thoughts that are beneficial to others. In contrast, all the consequences of any actions and thoughts that are harmful to others brings about one's own downfall and all the other undesirable consequences that we see in the world. So in brief, and then the text goes on to say that even birth in the hell realms and so on, all of these are consequences of engaging in actions that are harmful to other sentient beings. So in brief, what Shantideva presents in his Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, where he says that if one does not, exchange self and others and, begins to cherish the welfare of other sentient beings, then not only will one not attain Buddhahood, but even in this lifetime, there will be no happiness. So therefore, all the experiences of happiness, whether even in this lifetime, are in one way or another consequences of actions that are beneficial to other sentient beings. So therefore, if one can reflect deeply, one will truly come to appreciate the value of these two teachings, the teaching on emptiness that we spoke about, which pertains to understanding a deeper nature of reality, and then teaching on altruism, which is the Bodhichitta awakening mind. So when you are able to adopt a path that has a combination of these two practices, then clearly as Shantideva says in his Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, when he says that, therefore, overcoming any sense of weariness or tiredness, one should ride the horse of Bodhichitta, the awakening mind, and then travel from a place of joy to a place of joy. And what sane person or intelligent person would not take joy in making such a journey? So this is truly powerful, because you can, if you really think deeply as a practicing, as a practitioner, if you are able to really implement these two principles, the principle of understanding the nature of reality and the principle of altruism, then clearly a new chapter opens where your whole journey in life opens to a journey towards happiness, a true joy. Therefore, one can truly relate to the sentiments expressed in Shantideva's text when he says that as long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, may I too remain and dispel the miseries of the world. So you can then relate to that kind of sentiment and truly have a sense of what genuine, deep, tranquil and happy and joyful mind must feel like.
大学的就是求助，你说，可是光白淡白你明白的淡白哪着，可是光白淡白哪，现在东西几天呢？三代台湾团来讲，那么办如果切，第二我说第二，第二他们出路说，台他那么就人类当哪那么进步，我说明全能东方地线呢，来人这个淡白讲，第二我说来讲。 天我说为我说没用来讲，买都穷，真的我在地上下，那这个，我那让他这里头这个他老去讲脱了，哎呢，我那他这没南州的，这可说是他那边的早晚收起来，没南州快些收起来，南州的朝的这边没학생印度的，我那他下上去，是吧？单头收起来，那好多。
So then we read from stanza 86, where Nagarjuna writes, when through practice it becomes firm, he's talking about Bodhichitta, then alarmed by others' suffering, the Bodhisattvas renounce the bliss of concentration and plunge even to the depths of relentless hells. This is indeed amazing, praiseworthy it is. This is the excellent way of the sublime. That they give away their own flesh and wealth is not surprising at all. Those who understand this emptiness of phenomena, yet also conform to the law of karma and its results, that is more amazing than amazing. That is more wondrous than wondrous. So if one can train one's mind along these lines, on the basis of the teaching on emptiness and altruism as outlined in this text, then clearly one will be able to bring the optimal potential that lies in the human mind and would make the human intelligence most meaningful and would have achieved and served its purpose. And in this way, one will be able to cultivate the greatest amount of courage and also greatest degree of altruism. And once you are able to do those things, then truly the expression making one's human existence meaningful would come to be real.
That is what the Shologa Jada Shi. Oh, the Jada Shidi, Ninjiruji, Sonamjur, Dungniruji, Chojo, Dada Shandu, Drudu, Kandun Tada, Yasay, Mobukunji Talandu. 15순도 다쳐 상계 동네 초전도 직전적 버tada 슉 어다디
So then we will read from stanza 103, which is on page 17. The single taste of compassion is merit. The taste of emptiness is most excellent. Those who drink the elixir of emptiness to realize self and others' welfare are conquerors' children. Bow to them with your entire being. They are always worthy of honor in the three worlds. These guides of the world reside as representatives of the Buddhas.
Yeah. So those, I think, Buddhist practitioner, as we practice these lines, then we become genuine follower of Buddha, not only follower, but also Bodhisattva.
Representatives of the Buddha.
So, let us try to put in implementation, practice.
Implement them in practice.
So, finished.
We would like to invite Susan Dawn. Please make announce about financial issues and words gratitude from the organizing committee.
Wait. Oh. No. Don't do that. Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Of course, the Buddhist the literature or Buddhist tradition says still of that. Toma tujung shiro, then samjung shiro, then gumjung shiro again, modern do attach to session.
So the Buddhist teaching states that as practicing Buddhist, at the initial stage, we have to cultivate the wisdom through learning, on the basis of learning. And once you have cultivated the learning, then on that basis you have to use critical reflection and contemplation so that you arrive at the second level of understanding derived through reflection. And then finally, we have to cultivate understanding derived from personal meditation practice.
So time is major factor. You don't expect there's some big change within 1 week. Unrealistic. So try. Then months, years, decades, then eventually some change in our mind, particularly in the emotional field. Then you really feel these teachings are really, I think, a powerful weapon to destroy, to eliminate the ultimate sources of our problem, sources of the suffering, of pains. So the more you reduce these negative forces, then the positive forces also gain more strength. As a result, our life becomes meaningful, joyful, and from the Buddhist viewpoint, not only this life, but life after life. And through that way, eons, like that way. Thank you.
Om
mani padme hum, mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, mani padme hum, om mani padme